Hello, dear friends. My name is Vasyl Pekhno. I'm a Ukrainian journalist, and I invite all of you to watch this latest update on Ukrainian battle map situation as of October the 9th. Join, watch this video, like it, share it, subscribe, and leave your comments just below the video. Let's begin today's overview. Let's get started. We'll be reviewing the map from the Deep State resource, which, as usual, kindly provides us with all the public information we can see and which allows us to follow the events happening on the front line. Let's begin. Today I'll probably outline the range of topics we'll be discussing. These will be Pokrovsk, Lyman, and Kupiansk. In fact, these are the three most intense directions of combat operations. Although it's worth noting that yesterday's General Staff report mentioned that quite a high intensity of combat operations suddenly broke out in the northern Kharkiv direction, or as it is called in the General Staff report, the southern Slobozansky direction. This refers to the area of Vovchansk and Lipsy, that is the north of the Kharkiv region. Here too, the Russians tried to probe our defenses in a situational manner, but essentially it didn't work out well for them. Regarding Pokrovsk, further information is being communicated about enemy losses in the Dobropillia direction at the Dobropillia breakthrough. Our president, Volodymyr Zelensky, yesterday announced the current total figure of those losses, of the enemy that were recorded here. So, from the beginning of August until today, October 9th, that is, from August 9th to October 9th, exactly 2 months since the Dobropillia defensive operation began, the total enemy losses amount to over, attention, 12,000 personnel. Just imagine, in 2 months, the Russians have lost 12,000 people here, of which 7,000 are irrecoverable losses. That's according to the 200 reports. And now, by the way, I talk to the soldiers, and I know that it's impossible, let's say, to fake it, that if you hit someone, you can't just claim you destroyed the enemy unless you have confirmation. We have internally, let's say, within the armed forces or the internal defense forces, a system called Delta, where you confirm enemy casualties and you show that, yes, this one is dead, that's a 200, or no, not this one. Here, we didn't eliminate him. Here, he got up and walked away, but later on, he died too. Most likely, the sanitary losses among the occupiers amount to about 5,000, over 5,000. These are the 300s, but you can't count them as killed and get more perks, so to speak. These are the kinds of losses, these are the kinds of results that the president reports on in the Dobropillia direction. By the way, regarding the situation directly on the front, there is a settlement called Novotoretske. On the deep state map, it is marked as a gray zone, with a black outline indicating a gray zone in terms of the presence of enemy forces here. But it is quite obvious, and this can be seen in the video, which unfortunately I cannot show in this review, but I will gladly share this video from the 425th Regiment on my Telegram channel. Subscribe to it. I ask you to do this situationally and as the opportunity arises. As you can see on the screen, Vasyl Pekhno _news. This is my personal blog under my name Pekhno on the social network Telegram. There are already almost 70,000 people there who read the news. I would be glad if you join and become the next subscriber among those who trust me. Accordingly, the 425th Assault Regiment Skala, or more precisely Scaly, showed footage from our ambush in Novotoretske, and it wasn't just an ambush by drones, but by our infantry. Because previously there was often talk that many people didn't believe the enemy could be cut off here, or that a cauldron could be created for them, and many said, come on, using drones is not serious to talk about a cauldron for the enemy. Here there is the physical presence of our soldiers in Novotoretske, because the Russians showed up as a group of 4 occupiers near one of the buildings, and there they were actually ambushed by our soldiers, who opened fire with small arms and destroyed the enemy in Novotoretske. In other words, this very fact confirms that in Novotoretske, the enemy, more precisely our soldiers, are present. The enemy also enters there, but there are definitely positions held by our soldiers. It's just that enemy Telegram channels are spreading the story that supposedly the Russians have already regained their lost position in Volodymyrivka, but this does not correspond to reality. I repeat, the video that I will show on my Telegram channel, you can go there, friends, and see for yourselves how our assault unit fighters are taking out 4 Russians in this direction. By the way, the president, when speaking about the consequences of the defensive operation in Dobropillia, also acknowledges the fighters carrying out missions here. These are mostly assault units. These units are now to be formally established as a separate branch of the military assault troops, apparently led by Colonel Manko, whom you can see on the screen. There are currently a lot of questions for him, frankly, from the press, a billion questions really, about Manko's past and about the people surrounding him. I won't be retelling the large amount of material that exists on this topic here. I'll just say that right now, in this sector of the front near Dobropillia, In fact, the president noted that the soldiers of the 1st Separate Assault Regiment, which will apparently become part of the assault units of the 33rd Separate Assault Regiment. This is the former unit that was previously led by Manko. And the president also mentioned the battalions of the 92nd Assault Brigade here. And this, by the way, is an interesting aspect because Manko gave an interview to the Ukrainian publication Babel, where he specifically talked about the structure of the assault troops and what they should be like. Obviously, the fact that they will exist is a settled matter. This issue has already been approved at the staff meeting. So Manko specifically said that all the current assault regiments will be included in the composition of the assault units or assault troops. These are the 425th, 225th Assault Regiments, the 33rd, 210th Assault Regiments, and the 1st Separate Assault Regiment, which is also currently near Pokrovsk. All these regiments will be included, as well as the Ari Assault Battalion, which comes from the units of the Ukrainian Volunteer Army. He also said that certain separate battalions of the 92nd Assault Brigade will be added to the assault troops because the 92nd is a brigade within the ground forces. It so happens that we also have assault units within the ground forces. Entire brigades include the 92nd, the 3rd Assault Brigade, and the 5th Assault Brigade. By the way, Manko specifically says that the 5th is supposed to come under his command. As for the separate battalions of the 92nd, which are currently near Pokrovsk, they are to be reorganized into a regiment. Well, these are the kinds of specifics the future commander is talking about. Honestly, I'm still a bit bothered by the question of all these new structures being created and what exactly will distinguish the assault forces from the air assault forces. Manko explains this by saying that the assault forces are supposed to operate in small tactical groups rather than as entire combined arms units like the air assault brigades. In small tactical groups of 24 people, although to be honest, 24 people is quite a sizable group these days. That doesn't look anything like a small group, not even close. And these small groups are supposed to be redeployed to different directions to put out fires. It is precisely in this firefighting that Manko sees both the role and tasks of the assault troops, as well as their purpose, and he claims that this also saves the lives of servicemen. Well, in the sense that when brigades are stuck in a rigid defense, they actually suffer greater losses. And when assault troops appear and carry out counterattacks, the enemy becomes disoriented, and supposedly the line units suffer fewer losses. I'll be honest, this is a rather controversial thesis, and I have nothing to prove the opposite. Many people actually blame the leadership style of the assault troops, saying that they practice, so to speak, less than ideal methods. Manko partially confirms this. He says that a very large number of those joining the units are, for example, drug addicts with dependencies. Like, what are you supposed to do with them? What harsh methods should be used? Well, obviously, that's not something anyone wants to see in the Ukrainian army. And this is exactly what causes huge outrage. Plus, the environment surrounding Mr. Manko also raises, I'm not going to get into names right now, but it raises questions as well. And these questions, it seems like there are answers to them, but I can see that they don't satisfy society. Well, okay, let's move on. Returning to the detailed map, what's precisely happening south of the significant town of Pokrovsk? Here, some rather graphic and unpleasant footage of a truly disturbing nature was recently recorded. Now, I will proceed to show a comprehensive satellite map on the deep state resource, and there, as the saying goes, everything will undoubtedly become abundantly clear and evident to everyone. There's a settlement called Udakne just north of it.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
The mine administration, which is precisely what we are discussing in this context, the opposing forces, the enemy, made a significant advance there, pushing forward with undeniable confirmation that these enemy units are currently being systematically destroyed in this specific location. We are even able to observe direct, verifiable footage showcasing such extensive destruction. This critical area is situated directly to the north of Udakne, a strategically important point in the region. There is such a location, and for now, on the deep state map, it is neither in the red nor the gray zone, but right here is the Pokrovsk mine administration. By the way, this is a significant mine that in the Pokrovsk area performed very important tasks for our metallurgy, very serious ones. It is precisely in the area of this mine that strikes on enemy positions have been recorded. Our units are showing how they are bombing in the ruins of the building at this mine administration. Russian troops are present there. Well, it's clear that the area is already devastated, but the very fact of the Russian troops being located or staying at this site is an interesting aspect. For now, it's difficult and impossible to say for sure that the enemy has advanced here, but this is a significant point because the mine is a major alarming factor. The mine administration is a large facility where Russians can take shelter and, as a result, gather and accumulate their forces. Accordingly, if Russians have already appeared at this location, it doesn't bode well for us, to put it mildly. This means nothing good, because it brings them closer to the highway that runs from Pokrovsk westward to Pavlohrad. Well, you understand yourself, that's not a good thing. And it's very important to point this out because, well, let me jump from Pokrovsk for just a moment to Kupiansk, and I want to talk about the situation there. Because I keep repeating over and over again the point that comes up almost every day when there's communication about how it's not a big deal if the enemy gets into the center of Kupiansk, just on the northern outskirts. That's not true. It's bad and it's dangerous because the enemy has the opportunity to take cover there. Unfortunately, we've heard such statements even at the official level. And now, when it's been officially acknowledged that they're not just in the north right now, a unit from the 116 Mega Brigade, Blackwing, great guys, really great guys. I encourage you to follow them on Instagram because I know them personally. Accordingly, Blackwing is already showing strikes on enemy positions in the houses where they've taken cover right in the center of Kupiansk. And so, returning to the context of the mine administration near Udachne, close to Pokrovsk, for such massive residential sites like those in the city of Kupiansk or industrial sites like the mine administration in the Udachne area, if the Russians dig in there, then in the context of drone warfare, it's an incredibly difficult task to dislodge them from those positions. Therefore, I think the situation here definitely requires further clarification, but unfortunately, footage of the enemy being destroyed and strikes on their positions here is already being recorded. Moving on. However, regarding some interesting information shared by a Western OSINTer named Unit Observer, an OSINT analyst, he reported some very intriguing observations that the current advance or the pressure being exerted on Pokrovsk, especially on the southern part of Pokrovsk, has essentially diminished to such an extent that the Russians are gradually shifting their main point of attack away from here. Where are they shifting it to? To the Novopavlivka direction, that is over here somewhere in this area. Let's zoom in on the map. There's the settlement of Novopavlivka. The direction itself gets its name from this settlement. So, to Novopavlivka, the Russians have redeployed their units. Let's stick with this picture. Here it's clearer and easier to understand what was moved, where, and how. In other words, from the south, from near Pokrovsk, from the area of Shevchenkove, Pishchane, and other settlements like Lisivka, where the Russians are standing completely immobile thanks to the efforts of our 25th Brigade, which is holding the enemy back here. Now the enemy has transferred its troops to Orikov, south of Udachne, to the area I mentioned earlier, which we'll be talking about more often soon, and that's Zeleny High, Dakhnets, Ivanivka. These are the front lines. The Russians have redeployed a number of units here at once, at least 4 brigades, the 35th, 55th, 74th, and 137th Motorized Rifle Brigades. They were withdrawn from the area of southern Pokrovsk and redeployed closer here to Novopavlivka. In addition, the movement of Russian troops is being recorded on social media, which can be geolocated as movements within the city of Donetsk. In that direction, very soon I've already made announcements about this, we will be talking even more often about the very fierce fighting in the area of the Ivanivka branch and Dakhna. It is precisely in these areas that the enemy will try to break through to Novopavlivka and take up positions along the banks of the river that flows here. I believe it's the Vovcha River, if I'm not mistaken. The enemy will try to break through its lines. So let's say the Novopavlivka story is far from over. I will also say a few words about the Lyman front today, since recently there have also been images. The presence of the enemy was recorded in the area of the settlement. This seems to be the Kutir Vaimka. Here, the enemy was observed. Unfortunately, after the defense fell to the north, in the area of Bilohorivka, the entire line in the Siversk direction has been gradually moving westward, including Verkhno-Kamyanske, which is now also under threat. Direct fighting may be taking place on the approaches, possibly within the Kupiansk-Siversk area. Excuse me, but it is worth noting, and well, that's my advice. By the way, there are very serious battles taking place in Yampil as well. But in all these areas, it's most important to highlight the work of our pilots. They absolutely do not allow the enemy to have an easy time here. The pilots of our strike UAVs in this area, especially around the Serebryansky forestry, that's Serebryanka, Dronivka, and also ultimately Yampil 1, 2, 3, and Hrihorivka. Here, the UAV operators of our units, if it weren't for them, there would be such a terrible disaster here that, as they say, it would be beyond words. And for now, despite the enemy's significant advantage in manpower, our UAV operators, my deepest respect and gratitude to them, are holding the front here, even though, for example, the situation in Yampil is quite difficult. Deep State has already announced that the gray zone will expand here soon, specifically to the north of Yampil, but that doesn't mean the enemy is here. This village, this settlement is under the full control of the defense forces, but the enemy tries to slip in here from the northern outskirts, right from the forest, tries to gain a foothold, but the defense forces don't let them do it. That's the news, friends. Thank you for your attention. Take care of yourselves. All the best, and see you next time. Goodbye.